All right, welcome to another episode of Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard here on the Believe Network, brought to you by MyBookie, BoomChaga Mushroom Superdrink, Estate 98 Coffee, and Lauretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey. We are joined by a special guest today, two-time Super Bowl champion, New Jersey's own Chris Hogan. Chris, thanks so much for being here, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pat.
No doubt, no doubt. Excited to talk some sports, some football, but wanted to kick off by talking about the Jim Hogan Memorial Foundation golf outing coming up Monday, July 14th at Arcola Country Club here in Bergen County, New Jersey. Chris, could you tell us why this is such a special event to you and why your partnerships with Dick's Sporting Goods and Good Sports mean so much?
Yeah, so about going on, this will be the 3 years that we lost my dad unexpectedly. And, there was going through that whole process, and with my whole family, my brother and I kind of got together, and we wanted to obviously, what was the best way to kind of carry on his memory, his legacy. He was such an influential person, whether he was coaching on a field, not on a field, wherever he was really, involved in the community, especially where we grew up, and obviously in us as kids. So we came up with a golf outing. Guy loved to golf. He was pretty terrible at it, but he loved to golf.
Like all of us.
Yeah. So, we came up with the golf outing. The first year we partnered with Dick's Sports. They had a foundation, and it went really well. And then they put us in touch with another foundation called Good Sports, which is it's a gigantic organization. I mean, they donate millions of dollars of equipment all across the country to teams, towns, whatever it is, whatever these teams need. And that to us was something that we could feel pretty proud about and be excited about. My dad was on a field. He coached us from the time we were able to walk, up until pretty much high school, college. But he also he remained coaching even when we were out of school, when my
Oh, wow.
brother,
He didn't hang it up when you guys left the youth ranks.
No, he coached. I mean, he started a lacrosse program in the town that we grew up in, and he coached these kids, baseball, lacrosse. I mean, he was so involved. And, so we did it for the last year was our first year with Good Sports. We raised, we did well. I mean, we raised about $250K. And wow. So last year we donated to Bronx Lacrosse. We did a program in West Orange where this football program, pretty much the kids were swapping helmets to come on and off the field, and we donated, helmets and shoulder pads, and we were involved in it. We went there. I played with the kids. We ran. So it's a lot of fun for us, and we have such a great supporting cast. I mean, my mom, my brother, my sister, my wife. There's so many people involved in making this whole golf outing happen, but. I mean, it's something that we're going to continue to do for as long as we can continue to do this for. It's a really fun event. That's the other part of this whole thing was I play in golf outings throughout, all year round, and they're all for great causes. But for me and, my dad, it was more about an experience, right? And having fun on the golf course, enjoying yourself. And that's what this is about. There is less golf and more fun on this golf outing, which is important for me to part of kind of his legacy and him being there with us throughout the day is that everyone's having fun and enjoying themselves. So, yeah, we brought it to New Jersey this year. We've had it the last 2 years at my club in Long Island. And this year we brought it back to New Jersey and Arcola. If you're listening and you haven't had a chance to play, it's an amazing course, an amazing property. They do a really good job, and it's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We have a lot of people that donate their time and vendors, and my family and friends who are gonna be there supporting and riding around on golf carts with champagne guns and other liquid encouragement, swing encouragement, right? That's
Swing
little
encouragement.
swing juice for everyone. So it's a lot of fun. We have some great prizes and, auction items, and, it's a blast. We have a lot of fun, and it's our way of being able to remember him, and kind of carry on his legacy, and that was very important to us, and the foundation that we picked has been very supportive of what we're doing, and has helping us kind of can carry on his name, and in a way that he would be proud of.
Awesome cause. Great job by all of you, family and friends. It's Jim Hogan Memorial Foundation.com. You can go there to support, to sponsor a hole, sponsor the driving range, sponsor the bar, to play in the event, whatever it is, get a foursome. You guys need to go to this website, support the cause. $250K in the first year is enormous. I mean, you're being humble.
Yeah,
That's really good for year one.
Hats off to the people that come and support. It's great. And it was never about the money for us. It was always about, the people, and the fun, the experience, and the more people and the more kids that we're able to help, that's what he was about. So
Awesome.
We're looking forward to it. It definitely takes a lot to get it off the ground and put these things together, but we're in the final home stretch of this thing, so we're looking forward to next Monday.
Yeah. So no, I'm so glad you could tell us about that, and parlaying that into our conversation today about sports and about football. People know your story, obviously super impressive, two-sport athlete at such a high level, lacrosse at Penn State, football at Monmouth, and then a UDFA who makes his way to like an amazing NFL career, basically a decade in the league, almost 3,000 regular season receiving yards, 19 touchdowns and 40 starts. And people know and talk about, Chris, your versatility and your switching of the sports. I want to focus, though, on the work ethic part of this, because to me, yes, obviously you crafted and developed and had certain talents. But what's amazing to me is how many junctures along the way that you like started over, so to speak, and then won again and won again. And so my question to you is, how did you develop that? I'm sure your father had a lot to do with it growing up, but how did you develop that and then hone that so that you were confident enough and kind of resilient enough to push through these different hurdles or new beginnings, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, and the work ethic for me really started at a very young age. It was playing sports was something that I loved to do. I was always on a field playing something. It didn't matter what it was. And that was at a young age. And then, you get into high school and you start becoming a little bit more sports specific, right? Football, lax, basketball, whatever it was. And all of those sports, everything that I was doing, I always had this desire, and I never had to be pushed. I never had to be told to practice. I never had to be, asked, like, go work on your right hand, go work on your left hand, go work on your routes. There was something within me that I always wanted to do more. I loved practice. I loved the process. I loved training. I loved being on the field. And that was just something that was inherently, I was born with, I guess. I had that intrinsic motivation that I just really always wanted to. I always felt like I was being outworked. I never wanted to be outworked. And to this day, I have this massive chip that still rests pretty heavily on my shoulder. That I just wanted to be good. And in high school, it was, I started playing lacrosse late, and I didn't start till I was a freshman in high school. So I always was trying to outwork everyone, and I never wanted to do something and be bad at it. Right. And that was I couldn't stand not being the best at something. So I always was working tirelessly to do that. Football, I never got the big offers. I was always striving to get the big offers and prove myself. And you kind of go throughout my career. I started in lacrosse and I go to Penn State, and then I have this extra year of eligibility and I go play football. And that was more of, at the time, it was a bucket list thing for me. It was, I just wanted to be able to say, hey, I played college ball.
Hmm.
And then, you start kind of going forward and it's like, all right, now you start this whole path of trying to get to the NFL. And that's my bread and butter, man. It's like, okay, cool. You're going to have to train every single day for hours on a day, not really knowing what's going to happen, but you're working towards this goal of maybe getting a chance and opening a door into the NFL. That was all I was looking for, was an opportunity. And months of training, working, and doing all these things. And I ended up getting my foot in the door. And for me, it was, I was very raw when I started in the NFL, and I had a lot of things to learn and craft and work towards. And, for me, I learned a lot about myself. I was cut for the first time. I've never been cut from anything in my life. And that was something added, that was like gasoline, on the fire.
That didn't discourage you. That
No,
encouraged
it
you.
didn't. It really did. The first one, I got cut from San Francisco. That was my first team. I went out to San Francisco as an undrafted free agent, went through training camp, had a good camp. It was during the lockout, learned some things, definitely knew I belonged out there with these guys. That was first and foremost for me. And then, I got nicked up and didn't, wasn't able to play in a few of the preseason games. So the writing was on the wall for me at that point. And I kind of knew what was going to happen. But I did get cut and, took a flight home the next day. Next day was training. Then went to your boys for about a coffee break. Was there for like 2 weeks. But again, it was just another opportunity. And then after that, I went to Miami. And Miami, I put in, I was there for the end of that season, the off season. I was able to put in the work. I, obviously did well enough for Reggie Bush to give me a nickname, and that stuck with me for pretty much my entire career.
The original 7-Eleven.
Yeah, exactly. And but again, like, I got cut. I kept getting all these bumps in the road, but I always go back to that first time that I stepped on the field with San Francisco, where I was like, I can do this. Like, I belong out here. I can do it. There was just a lot of learning, and I was like a sponge absorbing all this information, trying to figure out how to play the sport, and ended up in Buffalo. And from there, Buffalo was the first year that I made a 53. I stuck there for 4.5 years. And then, I think everyone knows the rest of my story, but, go to New England, win a couple Super Bowls, and then kind of bounce around the league for another 10, ended up having a 10-year career after really not playing any sort of football in college and 4 years of lacrosse. And I attribute that a lot to myself as an athlete, but also the amount of work that I put in to get to where I needed to get to.
Yeah, and mentally, clearly, adversity does not discourage you, which is, like you said, I think part of it being, or all of it being innate in you, that doesn't make you put your head down and quit. It makes you work that much harder. I mean, that's something, everyone would pay to learn how to do, right? Like in life and in sports. I mean, that's a rare quality, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that for me, obviously there was some discouraging moments in my career, and I went through, but the dealing with the adversity, I think, is part of being a professional or just life, right? And I have 4 kids of my own that are young, and they're all going through tough times, whether it's in school, learning new things, trouble with their friendships, or dealing with sharing a toy, right? And these are all things that I know that I can revert back to the things that I learned throughout the course of my career and my life and how I was raised, and I can teach them that, like, this is, yeah, sure, like, there are going to be hard things, but how are we dealing with these hard things is going to define the rest of a lot of your life. And being able to do these things and I don't make it easy on my kids, I'll tell you that much. Like, it's not, you're going to deal with the things that are in front of you, and I'm not going to tie your shoes if it gets hard, or I'm not going to help you with this math problem if it's difficult at first, because what am I teaching them? Right. And if someone was just to hand me a career in the NFL and say, this is what it's going to be, I don't think that I would be the athlete and the person that my career kind of shaped me into throughout that 10 year, and I went through all the bumps in the road. And again, I had a good supporting cast, right? I had people that supported me, and um, they believed in me. And that was a huge, it helped me a lot along the way. But also I think, most importantly is being able to believe in yourself and your abilities, and knowing that you're able to do the things that you set your mind to. And, that's, now that I'm retired, those are the things that I'm focused on. Dream big, work hard. That was always a big thing for me. And that's for all my kids. It's showing up, attitude and effort, things that you can control every single day, and, let the chips fall where they fall.
That's awesome. One quick parenting sports question on the same lines. Do you encourage year round sports, or what I mean is seasonal sports, get involved in everything as long as you can, or in the modern climate where they're always forcing you into, let's say, year round soccer or whatever, it's like anything a kid is good at, suddenly that's supposed to be your only sport. How do you approach all that? Is it case by
Yeah.
case?
Youth sports is tough. It's a interesting climate to navigate through.
I'm
Uh,
going through it now too. So that's part of why
Yeah,
I'm
so it's
asking. Yeah.
it's very it's very interesting. But for me, I want my kids to play everything, and that's what I did. And I think that there's listen, you could argue both sides of this whole thing and say, oh well, you focus on one sport, you can get, you're gonna set yourself apart. But I learned so much from playing lacrosse, from playing football, from playing basketball, from who can baseball, soccer, all these things. They taught me so much, and I was able to use so many different things, from where I was a coach in lacrosse that was teaching me something that I could carry on into the football field, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And I just think that you get so much experience and knowledge about competing and playing different sports, that obviously I'm not going to force my kids to do anything, but I want them to get that experience, and learn how to play different sports, and love playing different sports, and love the process of learning different things. They're young. I mean, my oldest right now are 8, right? But I want them to do everything. My son loves playing. He's playing everything that he wants to do, and my daughter's the same way. And I have 2 younger daughters that I'm gonna hopefully, if they're into sports, they're into sports, and if they're not, then we'll be into a million other different things. But it's
Yeah.
doing all those things. I mean, I don't see the benefit in being a one sport athlete. I don't, and I think there's just so much that you can learn from playing different sports that carries far beyond the field. It does. And I can attest to that. And I'm sure a lot of other people can, the same.
No, I agree with you. I appreciate that perspective. Shifting back to your NFL story, it's funny you glossed over the Patriot years there. You're like, yeah, everybody knows what happened there, but one of
We
my
are on
first.
a Giants podcast, so I do want to tread lightly with.
Well, yeah, we veer national though. Yeah, the Giants are the bread and butter here, but especially lately, where even Giants fans are tired of talking about them, really. So, you got to kind of expand your horizons.
Yeah.
But yeah, good point. So, but no, what I wanted to get in on was you joined the Patriots, and Tom Brady, the GOAT, is notorious though for being very precise when he plays with receivers, whoever's on the offense. He needs them to learn it specifically. And usually it takes some acclimation for his teammates to kind of get on the same page. And then everyone would start to cook. But you come in, average 17.9 yards per catch that season. I'm not sure if you led the league, but you had 1,012 yards, including regular season and playoffs, 6 touchdowns. You win a Super Bowl. My question is, how did you earn Brady's trust that quickly and assimilate so fast when McDaniel's offense, Brady, it was all known for just taking a lot of time to get together?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the deep answer, right? It's the on the surface, it's me just working, my butt off, really, to earn Tom's trust, and the playbook, and knowing what to do, how to do it, where to be on the field, there's a lot of detail. That offense was so detail oriented, and Tom obviously played in it for so many years and had guys like, Julian, Danny, Gronk, James White, like, he had all these guys that had been there, that knew the offense, that knew how to do these things, and he trusted those guys to be able to do all of that. So for me, when I came in, I knowing that, and obviously you're being told that, if he doesn't trust you, you're not going to get the ball. There's pretty much a black and white, playbook right there in front of you. It's like, okay, if I want to play with this guy and I want to be able to compete and to contribute to this offense, I'm going to have to do certain things. And so those certain things were really just obviously showing up in practice, knowing what I'm doing on the field, showing up in the meeting rooms, being able to be on the field, whether I was getting the ball or I wasn't getting the ball, but showing up on film when he's watching, because he definitely is, that I know what I'm doing, right? Whether I'm on the backside of a route or like I'm part of a route concept where I really need to do my job to get somebody open. If I'm blocking the right guy, does he trust me to bring me down to come in and insert for a safety? Does he trust me knowing that he's going to look out and change the route concept or change the route or be in a no huddle offense and be able to give, all the different hand signals that we have to be able to do all these things, code words. So it was a lot of study. It was definitely a lot of me diving into the playbook and taking the time to know that, because I was not going to be that guy that just had to constantly be told what to do. And to be quite honest, if you weren't going to be on the field. Bill didn't tolerate it, Josh didn't tolerate it, and Tom didn't have the patience for it. So I really just had to dive into it. And I think initially it was me kind of showing up and kind of showing my just ability to get open and catch the football. And that's obviously one part of it. And then the other part of it is the mental side of this thing, and being able to communicate with him, to have a conversation with him on the field about the different concepts that we're doing, the routes that we're running, how he likes things being done or where he sees it. And, I was pretty fortunate. I was plugged right next to him in the locker room. So I was able to ask him tons of questions and he was able to communicate with me. And Tom is all, I mean, people ask me all the time what Tom is like, right? I mean, and the story that I always give is I would day of OTAs or, workouts, and I show up there. Obviously, I know some people, but, really the new guy. And he walks straight up to me and introduces himself as Tom Brady. I'm like, dude, like, I know exactly who you are. Right. But like, that was him. He knew everyone up and down the roster, everyone in the equipment room, everyone in the training room, everyone if you were a marketing director, scout. I mean, he knew you by your first and your last name. And that was Tom, right? I mean, he was a captain, and he took the time to know the people that were in this locker room that were going to help him win football games, because that's really all he cared about, was winning championships. And so, I definitely had my work cut out for me in the beginning, but, I didn't, get overwhelmed or try to take on too much. So I just kind of chipped at it little by little and, made a few mistakes here and there. And then when you make a mistake on the field, I corrected it and made sure I never did it again. And, so for me, I just wanted to do what was asked, right? Bill asked me to be on 3-4 phases of special teams, which I was, even in the Super Bowl. That was me. And there was a lot of guys on that team, Devin McCourty, the McCourty brothers, Julian, Danny, LeGarrette, James, all these guys, Dante Hightower, all those names, all those guys that were, captains of defense or offense or whatever they're doing. Dude, they also played 2 or 3 phases of special teams because Bill asked them to, or Joe Judge asked them to, right? So it was those were the things that was great about that locker room. Was there wasn't a lot of me guys in there. We all kind of wanted to do whatever we could to win football games. And that's really how I approached it. I learned, my football knowledge went through the roof those 3 years that I was in New England. Learning from Tom, learning from Bill, learning from Josh. those guys, the detail that they put into every single week and their game plan and how they prepare for games was, I've never seen anything done, the way that they do it. And I was very fortunate to be surrounded by those guys.
I'm really fascinated by, the question I asked you. The answer could go a lot of different ways. And you did tell one off-field story about Tom and him approaching you and introducing himself. But what I noticed is your entire answer was about the football. Like
Yeah,
your entire answer about how you earned trust, how the team won, and what the culture was like. It was basically like, no, like Tom Brady cared about how I played, how I looked
yeah,
on film. Could he trust me on the field? Yes, you're probably bonding at dinners and talking in the locker room, but essentially what you're saying is you could be good friends and bond that way, but if you didn't catch the ball on a slant route, didn't matter, right?
yeah, yeah. It was
That's
football, man. It
interesting.
was how, it was. Again, I always talk about those locker rooms. There was such a close knit locker room, offense, defense. I've been in locker rooms where it's kind of like, all right, offense is over here, defense is over here, and you don't really communicate, or that's probably not the right way to describe it because you do talk to each other and you're obviously in there for a reason to win. But that locker room was just so close, man, and
Hmm.
they knew how to win. They knew how to practice. They knew that we were going to go that Bill out there in 10-degree weather, and we never were going to go inside, and we were going to be in full pads on Wednesdays, and we were going to be doing live compete drills all the way into January. And yeah, sure, we were going to complain and moan to each other, but we were out there, getting each other better and enjoying the process. And to be honest with you, those are the things that I probably missed the most, right? Was about being in those locker rooms and being in those times where it's like, all right, there's a blizzard outside. We have this indoor facility that we used maybe 3 times in the 3 years that I was there. But we were going to be out there and we were going to play in the elements and we were going to get better. And I think, that's part of the reason why we were able to play into February at every single year that I was there and go to back Super Bowls. And those teams were some of the best, regardless of injury. It was that next man up mentality, and everyone wanted to do. I mean, Tom levels everyone up. He just being on the field, you go from here to here when he takes control, and he's one of those guys that you want to go on the field and play for, and you want to play better for, and you want to know what the hell you're doing so that you can play well for him.
Yeah, right, right. Well, Judge was telling me that one thing that stuck out to him the most was, like you said, you're playing like 100 snaps in a Super Bowl, and playing
Yeah.
and covering every kick, playing special teams, and that you refuse to come off the kick unit and the special teams unit despite playing every snap on offense. What was that like? Telling Joe Judge and Bill Belichick in the Super Bowl, like I'm not coming off of this unit.
I mean, shoot, Bill probably loved it. But that's. But I think being on those teams is what that does to you, right? Where you don't want it, you want to be that, you want to be a part of that unit. That unit for Matthew Slater, Nate Ebner, Jonathan Jones. You have all the guys that are the special, the kickers that they put so time to it. And I actually loved being out there with them. I loved being, that was a part of the game that Bill and Joe and all those guys, we put so much stress on that phase of the football game that I knew that this could be very important into us winning a football game or changing the course of a game. And I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be on the field with those guys. We put in all that work throughout the season and in practice and doing these things tirelessly. I never wanted to come off the field, and it was just, another opportunity for me to go out there and help this football team win. And that was important to me. So regardless if I was, I think in Atlanta, I probably, or Houston against Atlanta, I think I played like, I don't even know. It was like 120 snaps or something. I mean, it was a lot. I mean, it was enough that they started basing our offseason workouts on the amount of yards that I was running in that game. But
Wow.
that was important to me, man, to be on there. And obviously, like, you're playing in a Super Bowl, right? You're not I never wanted to come off the field at a Super Bowl. That was just one of those things that you never know when you're going to get back. And I was very fortunate to go back to back to back. But in that first one, I mean, the amount of energy and probably just running off of pure adrenaline for 99% of that game. But yeah, definitely Joe could never pull me off the field for those types of moments. Regardless if we were kicking the ball into the back of the end zone, I was still going to try to beat Slater down the field, which rarely happened because he was just an animal on special teams. But I was going to try.
Yeah. When did you know you were going to win that game? Or better question, in Super Bowl 51 against Atlanta, when did you get the feeling we can do this?
Probably it was probably when Dante sacked Matt Ryan and we recovered that fumble. It seemed like the tide was turning a little bit, and we knew that we had just played the worst half of football that we have ever played, and nothing went our way. And then we came out in that second half and was just we were just, okay, what can we do? Just keep chipping away at this, try to make some plays here and there, do some different things. And we stuck to it. We didn't do anything. No one had these outer body experiences. I mean, James White did. I mean, had like a million catches, but we tried to just play good football, right? And I think once we got made it a one-score game, and we were able to drive down the field in the fourth quarter and tie it, and then we won the coin toss, I kind of knew that was it. I mean, with the way that everyone was feeling and how we were playing, that drive that we got down into the red zone to win, the play that we called, we had worked on tirelessly throughout the year, and I knew exactly which play we were going to call and how we were going to run it. And I knew that when we called it, I was like, great, we just won Super Bowl. That was it.
Wow.
And it was obviously it's all about execution and making sure all 11 guys are doing the right thing. But when we called that play, I think we were on like the 4-yard line or something like that. It's something that we practice all year round, something that we practiced that week. I knew that this, leaving the huddle, you're like, yeah, this is it. Like, we're going to do it right now, this play. Obviously it had to be James White with the game that he had that day, which was just nothing short of incredible. And I mean, that game was, I still get nervous thinking about
it. Yeah, James White, all-time performance in an all-time game. For those who don't know, as I was like refreshing, my stats and looking at your career, Chris Hogan with an 8-1 playoff record in 9 games, 34 catches, 542 yards, 4 touchdowns. That included 9 for 180 and 2 TDs in the AFC title game in 2016 season, January 2017, as well as 6 for 128 in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. But Chris, one thing that stuck out to me too, again, going back to our mutual friend, Joe Judge, he was raving about your production, your work ethic, but he said another story that stuck out was leading into that 2017 AFC title game against Pittsburgh, I believe. He said Brady got banged up in one of the practices, and you're sitting in his office, and you and Joe Judge are making up different fake punt packages to try to generate offense any way you could. Could you take me into that? And then, take me into that moment, into that week, into that type of process. And is that also like a quintessential, like Patriots way type thing of just digging into the details, like every minute of every day to find out?
Yeah. I mean, once you get into that point of the season, obviously anything that you can and willing to do to win a football game, you're going to do it. So you're leaving no stone left unturned to try to win that game to get to a Super Bowl. And I mean, I remember that day, practicing and we were in the stadium and it was just a routine snap and it was cold, but Tom got a busted up finger. And Brian Hoyer, who had not played a snap the entire year, had to step in, and then we started you know, I'm not going to say the wheels were coming off, but we were there was a little bit of like, okay, like how are we going to do this? But there was never like, okay, we can't do it just because 12 is not taking snaps. Like, okay, Brian stepped in. He was a true professional. He had been around the league. He knew how to play this game. He had been in that offense. It wasn't like we were just having a guy come in that didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
So that like we didn't really miss a beat on that. But yeah, they were like, okay, cool. How are we going to win this game? And special teams was going to be a huge part of it. Being able to control the field and knowing that they have a bunch of guys on their team that can kind of change the course of a game. We were playing, AB was on that team, Le'Veon Bell was on that team, so we knew that our defense was going to be heavily centered around them. But is there going to be a way or a time in the game where we're going to be able to change? Make a big play on special teams, or how are we, I think Julian took snaps at quarterback that week where we had a package with him, thankfully we didn't have to use it. But, we had these different things, but that's just the way that team functioned, right? When I talk about the next man up mentality, it's like, yeah, okay, you have the best quarterback ever to play the game, gets hurt, and it's kind of up in the air whether or not he's going to play in the biggest game that you have this season. And sure, were people like, this is going to be tough? Yeah, sure. Would have been tough? Probably. But would we have probably tried to find a way to win? Yeah, I would have bet your butt that like we would have went out there with Brian Hoyer and won that football game, because that was just the type of team that we, and we might have not blown them out the way that we did, or be able to do some of the things that we were going to be able to do. But like, I promise you, Josh had a plan for Brian going into that game if Tom wasn't going to be able to go. And then it's just like, okay, how does everyone else step up in that course if that's the way this game is going to go? Special teams is going to be a big part of it. You're going to rely on the defense to be able to do their thing. And then offensively, it was just going to be everyone doing their job. I know it's so cliche to say, in that Patriot way, right? But doing your job in a game like that's like the most important thing ever. I mean, I got a million stories of that, but you can go to 2016. Tom is suspended for the first 4 games of the season. You got Jimmy Garoppolo, who comes out there and, does awesome for the first 2.5 games. Then we have Jacoby Brissett that has to come in on a Monday night game against Houston with a broken thumb because Jimmy has a shoulder issue that he can't throw. And now you're relying on a rookie who's never taken snaps in the NFL to go win against Houston, who's got J.J. Watt, Merciless, Brian Cushing, a tremendous secondary. And you know what we did? We ran the ball like 45 times that game for like however many yards. We beat the brakes off of them. And Jacoby he had like a 60-yard touchdown. But like that's like a right there, right? Do your job, right? Next man type mentality. Go in there because you knew that the guys were going to have your back. They knew that we knew how to win a football game. It was going to be a little bit different. The receivers weren't going to be running down the field very often. We were going to, put on our lineman gloves and, kind of put a little extra tape on and block for these guys. And we did that, we won a football game with a rookie. Like that again, like there's so many of those types of stories, throughout the years that I was there. But that was the type of team that we had.
It always fascinated me. Like I started covering the NFL in 2016, and it surprised me actually as I got to learn the league and got to know different coaching staffs and ask around about why people succeed and fail. It surprised me that more teams and coaches didn't do what Belichick did, which was just approach every game as its own thing. Yep. And like be willing to game plan for that game, where you have a lot of coaches who it's like, this is my structure, this is my system. And yeah, I'll tweak this there and this here, depending on the opponent. But by and large, this is what we run. So it's not a surprise to me that you gain an edge. It's obviously a lot more work. Yeah. But, it's very interesting to me that more coaches don't follow suit there. I guess it's just more difficult. But that takes me to a question about, I know everyone's asked it. You've probably been asked it 1,000 times already. Just curious what you think of him being at UNC, how he's going to fare, Bill Belichick, in the college ranks. And I guess an addendum to that would be, do you think he's done in the NFL, or do you think he'll still have an itch to scratch there?
No, I mean, knowing Bill and knowing his competitiveness and who he is, I feel like he's going to try to get back into the NFL just because I know just how much he loves football and loves to coach. I think being in the collegiate level is definitely interesting. You're surrounded by, not 25, 30, 40-year-old men anymore. You're surrounded by teenagers, 17, 18, 20-year-old kids who are, but like, I think there's certain ways to look at it. For these kids that are UNC, you have this opportunity to learn from one of the best coaches to ever play the game and to coach the game. And I think that there's going to be a certain level of, do I think that they're going to be this national championship team? No, I don't. But like the collegiate football is kind of the wild, wild west right now with the, how, transfer portal and NIL and all of these different things. It's such a unique landscape to try to navigate through. And I'm sure that's a new thing for him as well. But, he's kind of well versed in all of that with how he was really the GM of New England and how he structured contracts. And obviously he had help in Nick Caserio when they were together. I mean, they had such an awesome relationship, and Nick did such a great job alongside with Bill and has continued to do it. He's seen what he's been able to do in Houston. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see, how UNC is going to be able to fare this year. And obviously there's a lot of the noise, on the outside, with, his girlfriend and all of these different things. And, Bill on social media and, but like, he's kind of in another phase of his life, and this is going to be an interesting chapter for him, going back to the collegiate level and seeing what he's able to see, what influence he's going to be able to make on these kids. And if regardless of what his record is, regardless of how UNC football does, I think that the impact that he's going to be able to have on these kids, if they're willing to listen and learn from him, is they're going to be able to carry on throughout their entire career.
Awesome. Well said. If you have time for two more quick ones, I want to ask you about some current NFL stuff. One is, Benny Fowler and I, we do this podcast together often, and he's always zeroing in, not just on the best receivers, but the best route runners, the guys who are most disciplined at the receiver position, running their routes most consistent. And you being a disciplined and detailed route runner yourself, 7-Eleven, always open. I was wondering, when you sit down on a Sunday and watch games, who opens your eyes the most? It could be a top guy, or it could be somebody who's kind of a sleeper that nobody talks about. Which receivers in the NFL right now do you think are the best craftsmen at the route running at the receiver position?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is those top guys. Watching Jamar and Justin Jefferson play on Sundays. I mean, what Jamar was able to do last year in the wake of not getting a contract and going out there and winning the Triple Crown and doing the things that he did was nothing short of amazing. But you really watch these guys play, understand that they're being double teamed on most of their routes. There's always a safety over the top, unless, you got guys where, you got, some really good corners in this league too. They're going to be able to match up with them, but they do a tremendous job of not only being so quarterback friendly, but they don't waste the best route runners that I've ever been around and was able to watch and learn from. They didn't waste any time at the line of scrimmage, right? And you watch Jamar and you watch Justin, they are into their route within the first two steps of getting off the line of scrimmage. And then after that, it's, their ability and their athletic ability of getting open and catching a football. And they're a danger when they have the ball in their hands. They're able to do different things, intermediate routes, long route, be able to, run a comeback 18 yards and stop on a dime and come back to the football and catch it with their hands and do all these different things that you just, you don't see it every single week on a Sunday. Is these guys' ability to do this week in and week out. And it's fun to watch, as a receiver that, put a lot of time into their craft and being able to run routes effectively and try to get open. When you watch that, when you really, really watch these guys, It's tough duty, man. And I was a guy that was really not double teamed a lot of the time. And I can tell you right now, it's tough to get open in the NFL if you're not willing to go to battle every single play. And, you got to know, like, you got Jalen Ramsey that's going to be watching your film all throughout the week, or you got Stephon Gilmore that's watching your film all throughout the week, and you got all these top corners that are going to be like, hey, this is, you're following Jamar, you're following Justin, like this is your matchup, like that you're getting the top corner and your top probably 3 or 4 D-backs are going to be watching your film every single week, man. I mean, and it's like, okay, how do we stop these guys? And no one's found a way, and that's obviously a credit to the quarterback that they're playing with and the offense coordinator kind of getting, using different ways to find ways to get them open. And that's also a big part of the game. But, when they just line up there just one-on-one, they're fun to watch. And right now you got to kind of tip your hat to how they're playing the game.
Jamar is so fun to watch. I root for them to always be in prime time so I can, sit there and just watch the full game, because like you said, it's, everybody knows Higgins obviously excellent player too, but it's like everybody knows Chase is getting the ball a bulk of the game and he's still wide open all the time. It's silly. It's so silly.
Yeah.
And another question, this is veering towards the Giants. I don't know how much as a former Penn State lax standout, I don't know how much of a diehard Nittany Lions fan you are or how religiously you watch Penn State, but Abdul Carter, the number 3 overall pick for the Giants, they weren't in pads in the spring, Chris. I know it doesn't matter, but looking at his production in college and then looking how he moved, how they moved him around as kind of a chess piece on defense in the spring, he looks like the kind of guy, if you get him on a guard who's not an all-pro, like he's, rushing up the middle, say on 3rd down in a NASCAR package, like he's going to be scary.
Yeah.
Just curious what you think about a player like him, what you think of his ability specifically to be able to maybe come into the Giants and change things right away for them. Because Neighbors is a very good player, still young, still learning, and Dexter Lawrence, obviously excellent, but they really do need 1 or 2 more of those like game-changing, game record type players. Do you think Abdul Carter is that for them right off the bat as a rookie?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's tough to come into this league and have that dramatic impact right away, just because you're not going against college level athletes every single down. Now you're going against top tier tackles and guards, and it's a different level of caliber of play that you're going up against week in and week out. And the NFC East is not an easy league, conference to play in, and you're going to be playing against really good single week. But from what I've heard, and I have some guys that are still playing in the league and are on the Giants currently, he could be a problem. You watch him on film, you watch his college tape. He's one of those. He's big body. He's not enormous, right? He doesn't have this huge frame, but he's got those guys that have that engine, man, that just like they're going and they're not going to stop. I think that they can be problems to deal with on defense, especially if they find unique ways to kind of move him around and put him in some different spots and create some different matchups for him to, get creative with his pass rushing and be able to, make an impact on that. I mean, you're going to have Burns on one side and probably Abdul on the other side, and you're going to be able to kind of do some different things with him. And I mean, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do at the NFL level for sure.
The Giants need to find a way to get it going. Maybe Abdul Carter is it. He is Chris Hogan, 2-time Super Bowl winning champion, New Jersey's own former NFL wide receiver, also co-hosts the Patriots Report on the Believe Network. And it is the Jim Hogan Memorial Foundation golf outing, Monday, July 14th at Arcola in Bergen County, New Jersey. Benefits good sports. Chris, anything else you want to say about the event?
No, got a couple more foursomes that we could fill up, and if you're in the area or you've never played Arcola and you want to come to a fun, exciting, and definitely not a dry golf outing, then this will be the place to come on a Monday. I mean, what better what better thing to be doing on a Monday instead of working? Come to the golf outing, support a good cause, and the people that come. It's a really good time, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with it this year.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for joining us, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Pat.